From the little studying that I've done on autism when I was in college, in our psychology class, we had to study about different developmental disorders. So, from what I remember about autism, the children, what I remember and what stood out to me was the children were very disconnected from their parents. You know, they didn't really show emotion or affection and stuff towards their parents. That's the only thing that I really remembered about it. And I'm like, you know, my son couldn't possibly, you know, have autism because, you know, my son is extremely affectionate with me. I can't stop the boy from kissing and hugging me. And you know, the same thing, you know, with his father. He's crazy about his father, and for some reason from the time he was born, he just loves my mother. He's just been so attached to my mother. Now other people, you know, he would kind of ignore, but I thought he was just, you know, you know, he knows you're calling him and stuff, but he'll just, you know, not paying attention to you, but then you catch him laughing about it and stuff. So I'm just like, he's just real sneaky. He's a Scorpio and stuff like that. But my major concern was the fact that he wasn't talking at all. Um, but anyway, as I get into studying about the autism now, you know, they call it a spectrum disorder now because there's different levels. You know, some children, you know, have very mild, and you know, some children have Asperger's, which it's a form of autism, but you know, the children are able to speak. So the only symptoms that my son displayed was the fact that he wasn't talking, and he didn't, you know, stand on his tippy toes or anything like that and flap his arm like some of the other children do. He just wasn't talking, and there was times when, you know, I see that he want to talk. You know, I sing, and sometimes I'm singing around the house and he'll join in with me, like, ah, you know. And one day he just got so frustrated he started crying, and he'd never done that before. And it just hurt me so bad. I'm like, why is he crying? And I just really got this sense that he is trying to communicate and he wants to talk so bad, but for some reason it's just not coming out. So anyway, I got the diagnosis, and I happened to call my sister-in-law. At the time, I was reading a book dealing with Kevin Trudeau's book, dealing with debt and stuff like that and money. And for some reason, I was, you know, led to call her, and she was doing this intense study on vaccines because when she had her twins 5 years ago, when she got the kids vaccinated, they would immediately get really sick afterwards. Her kids are real smart, and they haven't been affected really bad like my son as far as the speech and everything, but one of them got eczema real bad. One of them was in the hospital a lot. He had breathing problems and skin problems and stuff like that. So when she had another child, just recently, she struggled with, she said to herself, now I know that these vaccines made my son sick because her kids would get sick immediately after they got them vaccinations, especially the MMR. And the same thing happened with my son. So anyway, she was battling within herself about whether she was going to vaccinate her newborn. And so she was doing this intense study, and I just finally broke down to her and told her, my son, they think he has the spectrum disorder. And so she immediately turned me to Jenny McCarthy's book, and I went and got this book right away. It's called Louder Than Words: A Mother's Journey in Healing Autism by Jenny McCarthy. And I got into this book, and God, I wasn't able to put it down. I read the whole thing the first night that I got it, and she basically shared her story. She's a celebrity, and here she is, dealing with, her son having autism and the struggles that she went through. And I learned through reading her book that this thing is reversible. I had no idea. this thing is reversible. You can go through steps to actually get your kid back to normal, and there's a window within the age of like 2 to 3 that once you do these things, you can get your child to return back to normal. And while I was reading her book, I mean, she talked about the struggles of, you know, having to take him to therapy, and how she learned that autism wasn't just about the brain, you know, problems affecting the brain, but it also had to do with the gut. The child's neural system is messed up, and they're not able to absorb nutrients because, you know, some of them have chronic diarrhea and stuff like that, and so they're unable to function, you know. And she shared the story about how she had to change his diet, and how she had to take him to therapy and stuff like that, and how her husband wasn't really supportive, and she basically had to end up, you know, getting a divorce and stuff like that because she really felt like she was on her own with this. And when I read her story, I'm like, oh my God, I have to tell mine. But first of all, I have to look into what she's talking about reversing this. And in her story, I will basically spell it out. They are saying and linking a lot of these childhood behavioral disorders to vaccines. I just want to say, first of all, you know, Jenny McCarthy, I thank you so much for writing this book. I wouldn't have known, you know, a lot of this stuff if you hadn't told your story. And I got to tell mine. And we all going to have to, I mean, if you have children, I don't care if you don't have children, if you're a human being, you need to read this book. And the next book that it led me to was what your doctor may not tell you about children's vaccinations. This is by Stephanie Cave, MD. She's a doctor with Deborah Mitchell. We'll talk about that next. What I found out blew my mind.